Yet again, it's hard to believe that some of these once beloved Angry Birds games have faced such a dramatic fall off, especially in recent history. And these games were once fan favorites, but over time they declined in popularity over the decisions made by Rovio. But let's start with some of the most beloved games that have taken a turn for the worst. Let's get slinged all the way back to March 2012, where we get the launch of Angry Birds Space. It was initially praised for its creative twist on the classic Angry Birds formula. The game was introduced with a unique gravity mechanic that made players take into account the gravitational pull of each planet, and each of these planets had their own design, music, and their own pig spin on the world. Like we had the donut planet, or the sugar planet, we could say, with some really fat pigs, I guess. And Angry Birds Space was just praised for its stunning visuals, new characters, fresh levels, and it captivated both fans of new and fans of old, bringing it to a unique harmony from both old and newer Angry Birds fans. Despite its early success, we could say, Angry Birds Space eventually lost its momentum and the game faced significant decline in popularity as the updates became less frequent. While the initial concept was well received by everyone, the game remained to fail to maintain the appeal over time, and its true intent became very clear from Rovio, making this a microtransaction based game where you'd have to either pay for the game in full, the HD version, or you'd have to pay for some power-ups if you didn't beat the level straight away. This monetization of the game actually wasn't the reason why the game became, to say, hated. It actually became mildly disliked and is still a fan favorite all time. But where we get to the hated side of the spectrum about Angry Birds Space, we have to move on to recent history and 2020 onwards. There a full 9 years later, when Angry Birds Space was first released, mobile devices had limited capabilities compared to nowadays, where the increased power of mobile devices allowed for smoother gameplay, better graphics, and just way more complex levels. And this is where we get to the newer games, Angry Birds Reloaded. With the advancements and all the new benefits of the modern era, they became prevalent in Angry Birds. And with the success of the Apple arcade game Angry Birds Reloaded, a subscription-based gaming service where you could pay for the game, which is another paid version of the game. That's where one of the first examples of hate towards this game became, is you had to pay for the game. It was a pay-to-play model, and it just wasn't enjoyed. Though Angry Birds Space was initially kind of forgotten about once these newer games, and only classic fans would know about the great golden era of Angry Birds, Reloaded demonstrated that great game mechanics can never disappear. Like, Angry Birds Space has great mechanics. Nobody can take that away from this game. But we did get to see a mix of nostalgia and older players just being a bit blinded by the resurgence of Angry Birds Space 2. It was a great adaptation to the continuation of Angry Birds Space, but we had some issues for a lot of people out there. A lot of players couldn't access it, either for money purposes, and it was just a lack of platform. You could only get this if you had an Apple device, which they're quite expensive, and if you had Android, you're just left out of the party fully. And if you weren't paying for this game, you couldn't access it after you use up your free trial, because I don't know, that's what I did. I just tried it out for like a week and just never paid for it again. But it just had a lack of community behind it, because it was a really niche game, and it's sad to see that this great game that had remodels, redesigns, new music, everything, it had such great potential, just fall flat because they wanted to make money from it, from making a paid game instead of a free game, and do microtransactions, which I think is better, to have a free game filled with microtransactions rather than having a game you to flat out pay for. This refresher into the classic games and this remastered version of the older games was great, but Rovio could have dealt about it a bit better. And just seeing a classic game be brought back to life is all I need to see to make it a great decision. But behind the paywall and the Apple exclusive is tough to see through. Game that I just can't see through is Angry Birds Transformers. Angry Birds Transformers was a spin-off of the popular Angry Birds franchise that we all know, and it was initially a hit when it launched in 2014, combined with the quirky birds that Angry Birds brought with the iconic Transformers universe. When you have two titans of the industry coming together to make a game, you know it's going to deliver. The game offered a unique twist on a side-scrolling shooter genre, drawing in fans of both series for its mix of fast action-paced gameplay, recognizable characters, and regular events, keeping players engaged, leading to a strong and very loyal fan base. Like all Angry Birds games, after a while, they start facing some challenges. And before we get deeper, fair play to Angry Birds Transformers for still being up and running. It's one of the few games that actually regularly updated to this day, which is crazy. It was released in 2014, probably one of the longest games ever. And the first issue we start to face is the introduction of the Battle Pass, microtransactions, and increasingly repetitive events, beginning to just frustrate a lot of players. Many people out there voiced their opinion for nostalgia for the original mechanics, such as the Shockwave Spiral, which allowed players to earn rewards easily. Bugs and performance issues became very prevalent over time and were unaddressed for years. A lot of issues are still there to this day, and just all this compounded to build into a big ball of frustration from the whole fan base. And this decline in quality has led to the growing chorus from the fan just calling it a cash grab really at this point. A lot of fans, including me, have recently seen that there's been signs that the game might be coming to a development end and maybe controlled by AI or something like that. Like something like Plants vs Zombies Garden Warfare 2, if you're familiar to what they're doing with that game. The lack of new events despite the timer ending and no update to the battle pass has alarmed a lot of players, and Angry Birds Transformers no longer appears on the Rovio's our game section of their website. Customer support or service, or whatever you want to call it, has been vogue and focusing on technical issues to fix this and not directly addressing the rumors about the game's potential shutdown, in parentheses, because it's not confirmed, it's not denied, but it's not looking too good for the game. I mean, this is kind of reminiscent of what they did to some of the other beloved Transformer games out there, like Transformers War for Cybertron and Transformers Devastation. And we all know Rovio is known for sunsetting their older games, and this game has gone for a bit too long for Rovio anyways. I don't think 10 years for a game is old, but it's ancient for Rovio. They like shutting down games early and getting in and getting out as quick as possible. Next up, we have a game that is really sad to see on this list becoming one of the loved to turned hated, is the original game. How did this happen? The original game was released back in way back in 2009. Like, wow, that's old. I'm older than this game. I'm old. sorry. The game instantly became a success once it was released in 2009. And the game was quite addictive for its simple mechanics, but very effective ones at that. Players were just drawn to the colorful graphics and the challenging gameplay. There was something just about flinging red birds at green pigs in wood, glass, and metal structures that just made a lot of people back into the 2010s feel real good about themselves. And I'm sure that we all know the true story of Angry Birds 2009, became a great success, and blah blah blah, became one of the most popular games in mobile history, and it was a part of a lot of people's childhoods. Happy ever after? No. This is where Big Rovio steps in, the killer of your childhood. 2019, they quietly and discreetly delisted the original Angry Birds game from app stores and stated that the game was outdated technologically. Which, I mean, yeah, fair. 10 years later. But this decision just annoyed long-term fans, new fans, everybody made the news. Everybody was like, whoa, why did Rovio just delete their game from existing? Well, they wanted to put focus on their newer titles and their newer monetization strategies in getting these games. And this left a big void in people's hearts thinking, wow, they are really just a cash grab company. And with the amount of backlash they got with this decision, what can I not say? After deciding what they wanted to do next, they eventually came to terms in 2021 that they would re-release the original game in 2022. Once this game was re-released, it didn't feel the same. Something just felt different. It wasn't the golden era anymore, and it was, everybody had this distant memory about the original game. And its declining popularity Rovio made a couple of attempts to garner fans back to the original game, calling it a bunch of other things, making it go through a whole process, Reds First Flight, all these weird, I don't even want to talk about the weird names. Reds First Flight? I didn't even want to call it Angry Birds anymore. It's just disappointing. It just made the game significantly become worse. And people just forgot about it again, and it was eventually, once again, delisted permanently. And let's not talk about how when they relisted it, it cost money to get it again. We do have an honorable mention for this list. We have Angry Birds Explore. This was a weird twist on the regular game. It was 3D motion instead of the classic 2D, which we already got accepted. It was an AR variant of the Angry Birds games that became really popular back in the time. And it was a new technology, so Rovio wanted to play with it, see how it would go, especially in 2019, where all these games became a big rage, VR, all this stuff, because lockdown was about to happen worldwide, and people were at home. This game just didn't deliver on much. and it was just eventually just disappeared off the maps and was never seen again. Not a good game, never was, and it just belongs in the hated category. Just wanted to make sure people know that. And if you got this far, why are you not subscribed? 97% of you aren't subscribed. Come on, let's get it to 5K. I'll see you in the next one.